The screams ripped through Oceanworld Orlando, piercing the humid air as trainers sprinted toward the platform. Crimson swirled in the tank. The audience stood paralyzed, horror etched across their faces. In a matter of seconds, the illusion shattered and Isabel Romero's life slipped through their fingers. But this wasn't an accident. It was a warning. One long ignored, buried deep, and ultimately paid for in blood. June 13th, 2022, began like any other sun-soaked Florida morning. Families filled the stadium seats, children clutching popcorn, eyes wide with wonder. Behind the curtain of smiles and splashes, Isabella, passionate young trainer who believed trust could tame instinct, prepared for yet another session with Kira, Oceanworld's star Orca. But trust has its limits, and predators never forget who they are. Nature doesn't bend to human will, and that day, it reminded everyone watching of the deadly cost of captivity. Before we dive deeper into this heartbreaking story, ask yourself, should killer whales remain in tanks, or is it finally time to set them free? Share your thoughts below, hit like, and subscribe, because stories like this demand more than sympathy. They demand change. Far from the glitz of Orlando, the sunlit streets of Seville whispered of old stories and quiet dreams. For Isabel Romero, though magic didn't come from cathedrals or cobblestones, came from the sea. Even as a child, she'd spend hours in her bedroom, carefully arranging tiny whales and dolphins across her shelves. While other kids dreamed of castles, she imagined giants of black and white slicing through endless blue. Her fascination wasn't a phase. By 10, she could name every known orca species by heart. Her bedroom walls were plastered with breaching whales, and her bookshelves sagged under the weight of marine encyclopedias. For Isabel, it was never about fame. It was about connection, understanding, standing beside the creatures she loved. Above them, fueled by passion, she enrolled in the marine sciences program at the University of Madrid. There, she thrived. Professors called her fearless, laser-focused, and unshakably driven. While others counted down to graduation, Isabel was already volunteering behind the scenes at local aquariums, scrubbing tanks, prepping meals, logging hours beside the animals she'd adored since childhood. Her ultimate goal was no secret. From her very first lecture, she set her sights on Oceanworld Orlando, the global stage for trainers brave enough to believe in building bonds with nature's most powerful hunters. Getting there wasn't easy. It took 3 failed applications, hundreds of grueling hours, and an iron will. Finally, in 2017, her dream took flight. She boarded a plane to Florida, heart racing, ready to begin the life she had envisioned since she was a little girl. But what waited for her inside those shimmering tanks wasn't just a career. It was something far more complex and, ultimately, far more tragic. It felt like fate. From the moment Isabel stepped into Oceanworld Orlando, she was overwhelmed by the scale of it, all the towering glass walls, the roar of thousands of spectators, the shimmering pools where shadows glided silently beneath the surface. But behind the choreographed splendor and rehearsed routines, every trainer quickly came to understand one unspoken truth. This place didn't belong to the humans. It belonged to the whales, like all newcomers. Isabel started at the bottom, scrubbing slick platforms, hauling buckets of frozen fish, observing from behind the safety of barriers. But even in those unnoticed, humble moments, her focus never wavered. Her gaze stayed fixed on the creatures who ruled the water. She didn't watch them as performers. She watched them as wild, sentient beings, movement a sentence in a silent language, each pause heavy with meaning. That's when she noticed Kira Dot at 2,500 kilograms. Kira was a 19-year-old orca who drew the eye like a tide pulls the moon. In the shows, she was flawless, graceful, commanding, hypnotic. But behind the scenes, there were whispers. Kira was volatile. She resisted medical exams, sometimes ignored signals altogether. Some trainers kept their distance. Others approached her with wary respect. But not Isabel. She never hesitated. There was something between them seen, fragile and electric, a bond that defied explanation. Trainers began to notice how Kira lingered by the glass when Isabel approached, how she floated still, almost listening when the young woman stood near. During rehearsals, Kira responded to Isabel's gestures with uncanny precision. Her sleek head would tilt, her gaze would lock not with fear, but focus. Isabel never shouted, never demanded. She communicated with calm, with presence, and somehow it worked. A rookie trainer, forming a connection the veterans couldn't explain. To the crowd, it looked like magic. To Isabel, it felt like destiny. But every bond with a predator carries a hidden cost. No matter the affection, no matter the hours of trust, instinct never truly vanishes. It waits, quiet, patient, lurking just beneath the surface. To the cheering audience, they were a picture of harmony, trainer and predator, woman and giant, moving in perfect synchrony beneath the golden Florida sun. Cameras flashed. Children cheered. For a moment, the world believed the impossible, that trust could tame nature. But beneath the glittering surface, cracks had begun to spread. Kira was a creature born in captivity. She had never known the open ocean, never felt the call of a wild pod, never swum beneath an endless sky. Her world was one of concrete walls, steel gates, and performance schedules. Applause replaced the language of the sea, and slowly, something inside her began to shift. The playful calf, known for curiosity and warmth, began to unravel. Moments of unresponsiveness stretched longer. Obedience turned into hesitation. Hesitation into subtle defiance. The change was there for anyone willing to see it. Moments of sudden agitation began to surface, breathe, unpredictable and without warning. Backstage, trainers exchanged uneasy glances. Some called it stress. Others whispered a darker possibility, that Kira was her mother's daughter. Her bloodline was a storm waiting to break. Kira's mother, Luna, had a long reputation for erratic behavior, powerful orca with a temper that flared without pattern. Her father, Titan, was infamous within the facility's history, not for his performances, but for the tragedies tied to his name, deaths, accidents, warnings that were never fully heeded. But Isabel wouldn't be swayed. She stood by Kira, publicly, proudly. She called her misunderstood, emotional, intelligent, sensitive to a world that had stolen her freedom and replaced it with expectation. Isabel believed that behind Kira's defiance was pain, not danger. Yet beneath the gentle words and cautious routines, an unsettling truth lingered. No matter how deep the bond, no matter how careful the dance, predators never forget who they are, and in Kira's cold, blue eyes, something ancient and undefeated was always waiting. June 13th, 2022 began like any other summer morning inside Oceanworld, Orlando. The sun blazed above, casting silver across the glistening tanks. Families poured into the stands, ice cream in hand, laughter filling the air, unaware that behind the polished facade, something was unraveling. For Isabel, It started with routine. No cheering crowds, no music, just a quiet medical session. Scheduled for Kira, these checkups were part of the rhythm of trust. Kira had done them hundreds of times, resting her chin on the platform, opening her mouth wide, allowing staff to inspect her teeth and gums. But that morning felt ... different. Behavioral logs from the days leading up to the session held subtle warnings, delayed responses, refusals to hold position, shallow breathing, minor deviations from Kira's baseline, but nothing flagged as dangerous. Just stress, the trainer's thought, restlessness. The session moved forward. Isabel stood at the edge of the platform, leaning in to inspect Kira's open mouth. Focused, calm, confident, too confident. She stepped just inches beyond the marked safety zone, lost in the moment, trusting the animal she believed she understood better than anyone. Then it happened. No warning, no hesitation. Instinct struck in a single, merciless heartbeat. Kira's jaws clamped down around Isabel's right arm. There was no play in the motion, only force. Brutal, absolute. The bones in her forearm shattered instantly under the crushing power. Tendons tore. Blood erupted. A sickening snap echoed through the arena. At first silence, not a scream, not a splash, just the terrifying quiet of a predator in full control. Then came the screams, raw, ragged, piercing. Radios exploded with frantic voices. Emergency alarms screamed across the facility. Trainers sprinted to the platform. Submerged speakers blared acoustic signals, commands, meant to trigger a release. But Kira didn't move. Her grip remained firm, unyielding, her massive jaws locked, her eyes unreadable. And then, just as suddenly it was over, she let go. Isabel collapsed backward onto the platform, clutching what was left of her arm. Blood spilled in crimson streams across the surface. Towels flew. Stretchers arrived. Panic surged, but the damage was irreversible. Within minutes, Isabel's breathing began to falter. Her skin paled. Her body fell into shock, and the girl who once dreamed of swimming with giants slipped into silence. Water filled her lungs, and despite every frantic medical effort, her heart went still. The clock read 11:12. A.M. What should have been just another routine morning at Oceanworld, Orlando, became a waking nightmare written, not in applause, but in blood, betrayal, and the brutal reminder that nature never forgets what it is. Isabel collapsed on the slick platform, her body instinctively curling around the ruin of her arm. Agony radiated through her, every nerve screaming. Her face twisted, contorted by pain and disbelief, as crimson poured across the black stage. The very place she had once called sanctuary. Trainers rushed to her, voices hoarse with panic. Towels pressed, hands trembled. Oxygen masks lowered onto her face. But they were fighting a losing battle. Her arm wasn't broken, it was pulverized, shattered. Bones ground into splinters beneath the full crushing force of Kira's jaws. And worse, something deeper had torn. The impact had set off internal devastation. Her lungs, overwhelmed by seawater inhaled in the seconds of struggle, began to fail. Her skin, flushed and burning only moments before, turned ghost pale. Her pulse weakened, vanishing beneath the weight of trauma and blood loss. Still, they fought for her. Chest compressions, IVs, epinephrine in desperate surges. Defibrillators cracked to life, sending waves of electricity through her fragile frame. But the human body, even at its strongest, is no match for a predator that weighs to tons, flesh breaks, bone crumbles, and in the end, time wins. The monitors, FLATLINED, at exactly 11:12 a.m. Isabel Romero, the woman who believed that trust could tame instinct, was pronounced dead on the very platform where she once dared to believe in the impossible. The aftermath unfolded behind locked doors. Oceanworld Orlando, built on illusion and engineered applause, scrambled to contain the collapse of its own myth. Public announcements were delayed. Carefully rehearsed statements filtered through legal teams and PR handlers. They spoke of technical difficulties, of equipment failure, not of shattered arms, not of lungs filled with seawater, not of the blood that had swirled across the performance, staged like ink in a storm. But truth doesn't stay buried. In the shadows, the silence was different now. Trainers wept openly. Some sat in corners, unmoving. Others clung to each other, shaking, uniforms soaked in salt water and regret. No one rehearsed for this. No one had a script for grief. The arena that once rang with cheers now echoed with ghosts. The ghost of Isabel's laughter, the ghost of Kira's silence, the ghost of a bond that could never hold forever. The illusion was shattered. In its place stood a cold, irreversible truth. When you work with apex predators, there is no choreography, no perfect ending. There is only survival until the moment. There isn't. For nearly 24 hours, Oceanworld Orlando remained sealed behind glossy gates and hollow reassurances. The official narrative rolled out technical setbacks, temporary closures, scheduled maintenance. No word of Kira, no mention of Isabel's broken body, wheeled out beneath white sheets and sirens. To the public, the park was merely paused. Behind the scenes, it had fallen apart. The trainers were ghosts of themselves. They wandered the back halls in silence, haunted by the memory of her screams, haunted by the crimson tide that had flooded the stage. Radios buzzed with quiet orders: go home, rest, as if sleep could undo the day, as if closing your eyes could stop the images from coming back. But Isabel's final lesson lingered in the air like salt. No matter the years, no matter the bond, instinct always waits, and it never forgets. Security took its place around the medical pool. Access was locked. Down, trainers were told little. Whispers filled the silence. Some said Kira had been isolated, circling her tank in ghost-like silence, her enormous body drifting beneath the surface, searching. Others claimed she lingered near the platform, waiting, expecting Isabel to return, with soft hands and familiar words. But no one was coming. Outside the park, the facade was crumbling. Visitors had seen the chaos, the flashing lights, the frantic trainers sprinting across the slick stadium floor, the sudden blackout of screens and blaring alarms. Some caught it all in shaky, terrified phone footage. The questions were coming. Fast now, and no PR script could hold them back. By sunrise on June 14th, the silence broke. Cameras lined the gates of Oceanworld Orlando. Reporters jostled for space, microphones raised. Under the sweltering Florida heat, executives finally stepped forward, suits starched, expressions rehearsed. They spoke of tragedy, of family, of loss, but never the truth. No mention of Kira's jaws crushing bone, no acknowledgement of warnings ignored. Just hollow phrases wrapped in corporate polish, desperately trying to preserve an illusion already shattered. But the storm had already arrived, and this time, silence wouldn't protect them. The official statement was meant to calm the waters. It did the opposite. Within hours, social media exploded. Images of Isabel smiling beside Kira, once symbols of harmony, now became haunting reminders paired with headlines soaked in grief, disbelief, and fury. Activist groups moved fast. They resurrected old ghosts like Natalia Ortega, the young trainer lost to another orca in this very park over a decade ago. Hashtag surged like tidal waves. Hashtag justice for Isabel. Hash for Akira. Hash another trainer. Gone for every tightly worded press release. There were thousands of voices shouting, back-using, demanding, grieving. Negligence, cover-ups, greed. The wildfire had begun, and the illusion of safety, once held together with applause and pageantry, now lay in ruins beneath the harsh glare of global scrutiny. Former employees stepped forward. Some spoke of years of ignored red flags, subtle behavioral shifts, aggression downplayed in favor of the show. Others confessed they had walked away, unable to continue working beside creatures they knew were ticking time bombs behind. Smiling performances. And it wasn't just the public demanding answers. Behind closed doors, formal investigations ignited. The U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration launched a full-scale probe. Every ignored protocol, every buried report, every systemic failure masked by glossy marketing was now under the microscope. Inside Oceanworld, the air turned suffocating. Trainers who once stood beside these animals with pride now questioned everything: their roles, their safety, their futures. Some filed for leave. Others flat out refused to enter the orca enclosures. The quiet unity that once bonded them began to unravel, undone by fear, shaken trust, and a dawning realization that the bond they believed in might never have been real at all, because the park hadn't just lost a trainer, it had lost the fragile trust that held its world together, and in its place grew something far more dangerous. Truth, undeniable, and rising fast beneath still waters. Before we end this story, I want to hear your voice. Do you believe tragedies like this will continue as long as killer whales remain in captivity? Or do you think these animals can ever truly be tamed? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe, because stories like Isabel's shouldn't fade into silence. Her death wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a brutal, bleeding reminder that no amount of training, no illusion of control can erase the instincts that live inside creatures like Kira. Behind the applause, beneath the lights, they are still apex predators, intelligent, powerful, untamed. Oceanworld may have silenced headlines, quarantined the whale, and pushed forward, but the questions remain. Heavy as chains, cold as concrete. How many more lives must be lost before we finally accept the truth? Trust is fragile, and instinct it never forgets.